Amid the tense atmosphere in the House Oversight Committee room, Jasmine Crockett rose to her feet, eyes locked on Ben Carson, then unleashed a barrage of evidence that left him, the man who once proudly rose from poverty, suddenly bowing his head, hands trembling. The entire room held its breath in the face of his deathly silence, and that moment when Crockett utterly dismantled him quickly became one of the biggest viral sensations of the year. The hearing room in the Rayburn House office building was jammed wall to wall that Tuesday afternoon. Every seat taken, staffers squeezed shoulder to shoulder in the back rows. The air felt thick, sweat already beading on foreheads even though the AC was blasting. Up front at the witness table sat Dr. Ben Carson, former HUD secretary, looking calm as hell. Legs crossed, hands folded, soft smile. The guy had separated conjoined twins, run for president. He wasn't sweating this budget hearing. Across the dais, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett finished straightening her notes. She leaned forward just enough to test the mic, tapped it once, sharp little pop that cut through the low murmur. Her eyes locked on Carson and didn't move. No smile, no nerves, just steady. 3 days earlier, Carson had dropped a tweet that everybody in the room already knew by heart. The giant screen behind the committee chair lit up with it now, blown up big so nobody could miss the shade. Some members of Congress would benefit from understanding that running government programs requires more than good intentions. Education and experience matter. No names mentioned, but the subtext was loud. Crockett and the younger progressives pushing HUD hard on affordable housing. They didn't have the pedigree, according to him. Carson glanced at the screen, gave the tiniest shrug like it was no big deal, then looked back at his opening remarks. The chairman banged the gavel twice. "The committee will come to order. Dr. Carson, you may proceed with your statement." Carson cleared his throat, leaned into the mic, voice smooth and measured like he was talking to patients' families outside the OR. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I want to talk about fiscal discipline at HUD, about breaking cycles of dependency, and about empowering communities through real ownership instead of endless handouts. We've made tough but necessary choices to streamline programs, reduce waste, and put people on a path to self-sufficiency." He kept going, hitting every note his base loved: personal responsibility, smart cuts, long-term thinking. Medical metaphors slipped in naturally. Like diagnosing a patient, we have to look at the whole system, see where the parts connect, and treat the root cause, not just the symptoms. A couple committee members nodded along. It felt like the hearing was sliding into routine territory, same old budget dance everybody had seen before. Then Crockett's light blinked red. She didn't move right away, just sat there letting the little red dot glow, letting the room feel it. Carson kept reading for another sentence or two before he noticed. His eyes flicked up, caught the light, then flicked to her face. The soft smile stayed, but something shifted in his posture. Shoulders squared, just a hair tighter. Crockett waited one more beat, then leaned in slow. "Dr. Carson," she said, voice even, no yell, but every word landed clean. "I want to talk about qualifications." The room went quieter than it had any right to. Phones that had been scrolling now froze mid-thumb. Aides in the back stopped whispering. Even the C-SPAN camera operator zoomed in a fraction tighter. Carson gave a small nod, still polite on the surface. "Please, Congresswoman, proceed." Crockett didn't rush it. She let the red light glow another second, then spoke straight into the mic, calm but cutting. "Dr. Carson, you've questioned my educational background. You've implied, more than once, that I'm not qualified to discuss housing policy. But there's one fact you seem to have overlooked. And when I say it, everyone here will see who's actually out of touch." Carson's faint smirk held for a beat, like he'd heard this kind of thing before from young progressives who wanted to talk feelings instead of facts. He leaned back a little, arms crossed loose. "Congresswoman, I simply believe complex policy requires complex understanding," he said, voice smooth, almost gentle. "My medical training taught me to examine systems, to see how the parts interconnect. That's exactly what I bring to HUD." Crockett echoed the last part slow, letting it hang. Your medical training. She paused, eyes never leaving his. Yes, let's talk about that. You're a neurosurgeon. Carson nodded once, pride flickering at the edges. Correct. I served as director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins for many years. Very impressive, Crockett said, but the tone made it clear she wasn't impressed at all. And that qualifies you to run housing policy because… Carson opened his mouth, but she didn't give him room. It taught you to perform brain surgery, which is extraordinary, Dr. Carson, truly. But when was the last time you personally dealt with an eviction notice? The room froze. Not a whisper, not a cough. Phones that had been half raised dropped back to laps. Aides in the back row exchanged quick looks. Even the C-SPAN camera seemed to tighten in, catching every micro-shift on Carson's face. His smirk was gone now, replaced by something tighter. I don't see how that's relevant, he started, voice still controlled but thinner. Crockett didn't blink. When was the last time you sat with a family being put out of their home? Negotiated with a landlord illegally withholding a security deposit? Filled out a HUD complaint? Not as the secretary, but as someone who actually needed help? Carson shifted in his chair. Congresswoman, my experience is in neurosurgery, which is… Crockett cut in clean. Fantastic for brains, but it doesn't automatically translate to housing markets. She reached for the thick folder in front of her, slid it open with a deliberate flick that echoed in the quiet. Behind Carson, two aides leaned forward like they wanted to grab the pages before she could read them. She started reciting, slow and clear so the cameras and the microphones caught every word. You earned your MD from the University of Michigan in 1977, residency at Johns Hopkins, all very prestigious. Undergraduate degree, Yale, psychology, 1973. Impressive lineage. She looked up, locked eyes again. But as I review your educational record, something's missing. Maybe you can point me to it. Where did you study housing policy, Dr. Carson? Urban planning, economics, public administration, real estate law? Where did you gain any expertise in a field directly tied to running HUD? The first real explosion hit the room. Whispers rippled from the press benches. A couple reporters typed furiously. Carson's mouth opened, closed, then he tried again. Leadership skills transfer, he said, but it came out quieter, less certain. That's not what I asked, Crockett said, slicing right through it. You've argued that education matters for understanding housing policy. So where is your education in housing policy? Carson's jaw set. He glanced at his notes, then back at her. My experience as secretary… Crockett didn't let him finish. You mean the job you accepted with no prior housing experience? The room felt smaller now, the air heavier. She closed the folder with a soft snap, but everybody knew she wasn't done. Not even close. Crockett didn't let the silence sit too long. She leaned forward again, voice steady but picking up heat. Since you brought up education, Dr. Carson, let's go there. I have a BBA and a JD from Howard University School of Law. For a full decade before coming to Congress, I practiced as a public defender and civil rights attorney, specializing in housing discrimination, eviction defense, and fighting for people in public housing. I've represented more than 200 families facing eviction. I've filed more HUD complaints on their behalf than you probably read during your entire time as secretary. I've stood inside the apartments you write policy for, smelled the mold, felt the broken heaters, looked landlords in the eye when they refused repairs. That's my education. That's my experience. She let that land, eyes still locked on him. Carson's face had gone neutral, but the easy confidence from earlier was cracking at the edges. His fingers tapped once on the table. Small, unconscious tell. Behind him, an aide shifted like he wanted to pass a note but didn't dare. Then Crockett reached into her stack and pulled out a single sheet, holding it up so the cameras caught it clear. And speaking of applications and experience, she turned the page toward Carson, letting the room see the header. U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Executive Branch Personnel Questionnaire. She pointed to one blank section circled in red marker. This is your own HUD application form from when you were nominated. Right here. Prior relevant experience in housing policy, urban development, or related fields. It's blank, zero, nothing. You accepted the job running the entire department with zero prior background in housing. A ripple of gasps rolled through the aides and staffers in the back. One of Carson's people half stood, then sat right back down when the chairman's eyes flicked over. Phones in the press row started lighting up again, reporters texting fast. Crockett kept her voice level, almost conversational now. You walked in with no study in housing policy, no work in public housing, no time defending tenants or landlords or writing regulations. Nothing. And yet you've spent years telling people, telling members of Congress, that education and experience are what matter most. Carson opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Congresswoman, my leadership. But she was already moving on, folding the form and setting it down like evidence in a trial. So let me ask you straight, Dr. Carson, since qualifications seem to be the issue you raised first. Who is more qualified to speak on housing policy? The neurosurgeon who never studied it, never practiced it, never lived it day to day? Or the lawyer who spent 10 years in the trenches, fighting eviction after eviction, filing complaint after complaint, standing in those same broken-down units you now oversee from a DC office? The room went dead quiet. Not a rustle of paper, not a cough. Carson's smile was completely gone, replaced by a tight line, eyes fixed on the table in front of him like he was trying to find the right comeback in the wood grain. Crockett sat back just a fraction, letting the weight of her own questions settle over everybody. She didn't need to yell. The facts had already done the shouting. Crockett let the last question hang just long enough for the silence to thicken. Then she reached for another folder. Thinner this time, but everybody could tell it carried weight. She lifted it slow, like she was handling something fragile but deadly. You've built a powerful narrative, Dr. Carson, she said, voice dropping a notch, quieter but sharper. Bootstraps, hard work, rising from nothing in Detroit through sheer grit and education. It's admirable. But there's a chapter in that story you don't mention much anymore, is there? She opened the folder, pulled out a couple of pages, and held one up toward the cameras. Did your family receive government assistance when you were growing up? Food stamps? Living in public housing? Yes or no? Carson's jaw tightened. He stared at the document like it was a bad X-ray. The room felt smaller, every breath louder. After a beat, he answered softly, almost too soft for the mic to catch at first. Yes. Whispers exploded across the benches. Staffers, reporters, even a couple of committee members leaned in and muttered to each other. Phones shot up again, recording. One aide behind Carson put a hand to his forehead like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Crockett didn't raise her voice. She just kept going, calm and relentless. Many families in Detroit did. That's not the point. The point is, you benefited from the very programs designed to help poor families. The same programs you've spent years trying to shrink, cut, or eliminate now that you're on the other side. She set the first page down and reached for a tablet an aide had slid over. With a quick tap, the big screen behind the chairman switched from the earlier tweet to a scanned page of Yale University financial aid records. Dated, official, Carson's name right there in black and white. Highlighted sections glowed. Need-based grants, federal Pell Grants, government-backed student loans. The numbers weren't small. Without them, the Ivy League tuition would have been impossible for a kid from his background. Crockett angled the tablet so Carson could see it clear. These are your Yale financial aid records, Dr. Carson. Need-based aid. Government support. Without those grants and loans, would you have been able to afford Yale? The degree you lean on so heavily when you talk about qualifications? Carson's jaw locked hard. His hands gripped the edge of the table. When he spoke, his voice came out louder, edged with something close to anger. I worked hard for everything I achieved. Nobody handed me success. No one said you didn't work hard. Crockett shot back instantly, not missing a beat. But you didn't do it alone. You had help, government help. The ladder was there for you. Food stamps to eat, public housing to sleep in, federal aid to get through Yale. And now, after you climbed it, you're trying to yank that ladder up behind you so others can't use it. That did it. Carson's chief of staff, a tall guy in a dark suit, half rose from his seat behind the witness table, mouth open like he was about to object or call for a break. Before he could get a word out, the chairman's gavel cracked down hard. Once, twice, sharp enough to make everybody jump. "Order," the chairman barked. "The witness's staff will remain seated. Congresswoman Crockett has the floor." The chief of staff sank back down, face red. Carson stared straight ahead, breathing steady but shallow, like a man who just realized the surgery was going wrong and he was the patient. Crockett closed the folder with a quiet snap, set it aside, and leaned back just enough to let the room feel the full weight of what she'd dropped. The whispers hadn't stopped. They were spreading, growing, turning into the kind of buzz that meant this clip was already heading viral before the hearing even hit recess. Crockett didn't pause to let the room catch its breath after the Yale bombshell. She flipped to a thicker stack of papers, voice staying level but carrying more edge now, like she was done playing nice. "Let's talk about your actual record at HUD, Dr. Carson, because if we're measuring qualifications by results, this is where it gets real ugly. Under your watch, you proposed tripling rent for the poorest public housing residents, people already scraping by on fixed incomes or disability checks. You cut funding for programs that help homeless veterans get off the streets. And you slashed investigations into housing discrimination complaints, even as reports of redlining and unfair evictions kept pouring in. Those aren't just policy tweaks. Those are choices that hit people where they live, literally." She let that sink in, then pulled out a blown-up photocopy of an expense receipt, holding it high so the cameras caught every digit. The screen behind the chairman switched to match it. A fancy dining set invoice from a high-end furniture place, total $31,000, approved under Carson's signature. And while you were making those cuts, while maintenance budgets for public housing were being gutted so elevators stayed broken and mold kept spreading, you authorized a $31,000 dining set for your office. A dining set, while families in your programs couldn't afford groceries or heat. Carson's composure cracked. He leaned forward, voice sharper than it had been all day. "That was for official functions, Congresswoman. It was appropriate for the office of the Secretary. We needed a place to meet with stakeholders, diplomats." Crockett cut him off clean. No raise in volume, just pure steel. "How many families could have stayed housed with $31,000, Dr. Carson? How many security deposits? How many months of back rent? How many repairs to leaky roofs so kids didn't get sick from black mold? You needed a fancy dining room. They needed a roof that didn't leak." The room buzzed louder, whispers turning into low murmurs. Reporters were typing so fast their keyboards sounded like rain. Carson's aides looked panicked, one already half out of his chair like he was going to rush the dais. Crockett wasn't finished. She nodded to her staffer, who hit a button on the laptop. The big screen flickered, then pulled up a scanned internal HUD memo. Dated 2 years into Carson's tenure, on official letterhead, his name signed at the bottom. Right there in the body. "We must reduce dependency on government programs to promote self-sufficiency." And paper-clipped to the memo in the scan was a color photo of that same $31,000 dining set gleaming in his office, like some kind of trophy. Aides behind Carson scrambled. One lunged for the projector controls, another whispered urgently into a phone. But the image was already up, frozen huge for every camera in the room to capture. Too late. The chairman didn't even need to gavel this time. The room was too stunned. Crockett let the memo stay on screen a full 10 seconds before she spoke again. Quieter now, almost conversational. "You wrote those words next to a picture of luxury furniture you bought with taxpayer money, while you were cutting the very safety nets that once kept your own family from falling through the cracks. That's not leadership, Dr. Carson. That's forgetting where you came from and making sure nobody else gets the same chance you had." Carson stared at the screen like it had personally betrayed him. His mouth opened once, twice, but nothing came out. The chief of staff finally got the projector shut down, But the damage was done. The image was burned into every phone, every feed, every memory in that room. Crockett set the papers down neat, fingers laced, and waited. She didn't need to say another word yet. The facts were screaming loud enough for everybody. Crockett reached for her phone on the dais, a move so unusual in these hearings that half the room leaned forward before she even spoke. She held it up, thumb hovering over the screen, eyes fixed on Carson. "Dr. Carson, I want to show you something real quick. Not a chart, not another memo. A video. Just 30 seconds. She nodded to the staffer at the control table. The big screen behind the chairman flickered to life again. Grainy but clear. An elderly black woman in a small Houston apartment, tears streaming down her face as two sheriff's deputies taped an eviction notice to her door. The woman, Mrs. Patricia Williams, 67, disabled, voice shaking on the recording, spoke straight to the camera. "They said my rent went up because of new HUD rules. I get $800 a month from Social Security. I can't pay triple. Where am I supposed to go? I've lived here 23 years. The deputies didn't look at her. They just kept working. The clip ended with her sitting on the curb outside, cardboard boxes around her, staring at nothing. The room sucked in a collective breath. A few staffers covered their mouths. Reporters stopped typing for the first time all day. Carson stared at the frozen image of the woman on the curb, face blank at first, then tightening around the eyes. Before anyone could recover, Carson's attorney, a sharp-suited guy who'd been silent until now, shot to his feet. "Mr. Chairman, this is not appropriate. This is inflammatory emotional theater. It has no place in a budget oversight hearing." Crockett wheeled on him so fast the chair creaked. "Not appropriate?" Her voice cracked like a whip, loud enough to echo off the walls. "Was it appropriate when your client went on podcasts and Twitter questioning my qualifications? When he implied I don't belong here because I don't have the right degrees? When he used his platform to belittle members of Congress who actually know what eviction looks like? Sit down, counsel. He made education and qualifications the issue. We're finishing the conversation." The attorney froze mid-protest, glanced at Carson, then sank back into his seat, outgunned and knowing it. The chairman didn't even bother with the gavel this time. He just let it ride. Crockett turned back to the witness table, set her phone down, and leaned in closer to the mic. "And here's the part you really need to hear, Dr. Carson. Mrs. Patricia Williams isn't just a video from Houston. She's on a live video call right now, waiting to speak to you directly." A staffer hit another button. The screen split. Half still showed the frozen eviction clip, the other half connected to a Zoom feed. There she was. Mrs. Williams. Same gray hair pulled back, same tired eyes, sitting in what looked like a church community room with a plain wall behind her. No makeup, no filter, just a real woman who'd lost her home. The room went electric, gasps, murmurs, a few phones lifted higher. Mrs. Williams looked straight into the camera, voice steady despite the tremble. "Dr. Carson, I used to respect you. I read about the surgeries you did, how you came up from nothing like so many of us. I thought, that man understands struggle, but now I'm on the street because of a policy with your signature on it. My rent tripled overnight. I couldn't fight it. My daughter's trying to take me in, but she's got 3 kids already in a 1-bedroom. Doctor, why'd you do this to people like me?" Carson stared at the screen, mouth slightly open, no words coming. His hands gripped the table edge so hard the knuckles went white. The room detonated. Scattered applause broke out from the back rows, then louder from staffers who couldn't hold it in. Cameras flashed. Someone in the press section let out a low, "Damn." The chairman finally slammed the gavel, once, twice, 3 times, yelling, "Order! Order in the room!" But the sound barely cut through the chaos. Mrs. Williams kept looking at Carson through the screen, waiting. He didn't answer. Couldn't. His eyes flicked from her face to the eviction notice still visible on the split screen, then back again. For the first time all afternoon, the man who'd once separated conjoined twins looked completely lost on the operating table. Crockett didn't interrupt. She just sat back, arms folded, letting the live feed and the silence do the rest of the work. The applause faded slow, but the weight of it stayed, heavy and unbreakable. Crockett stood up slow, deliberate, the kind of move that made every camera in the room zoom in tighter. She didn't pace or gesture wild. She just rose, hands flat on the dais at first, then one finger pointing straight at Carson like she was marking a target. "Real expertise in housing policy isn't a fancy degree from 40 years ago," she said, voice carrying clear across the packed room. "It's knowing that right now, in 2024, there isn't a single state in this country where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rent. It's knowing we're short 7 million affordable housing units just for extremely low-income families. It's knowing eviction filings have jumped 20% in the last 5 years, while wages sit flat and rents keep climbing. That's expertise. That's what keeps people from sleeping in cars or on church floors." She reached for one last sheet, a single page with clean bullet points, National Low-Income Housing Coalition letterhead at the top. She held it up, let the cameras catch the bold red text. "And here's the scorecard, Dr. Carson. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition has ranked every HUD secretary over the last 30 years on how effectively they tackled the affordable housing crisis. Want to know where you landed? Dead last. Dead last out of all of them. Not because you're not smart, you are, but because you forgot what desperation feels like. You forgot that not everybody can become a neurosurgeon, but everybody deserves a damn roof over their head." Carson shifted, finally finding his voice again, though it came out rougher, defensive. "Congresswoman, my personal experience with poverty actually makes me more qualified to—" Crockett cut him off mid-sentence, sharp and loud enough to make the room snap silent. She slapped another data sheet down in front of her mic. Bar graphs, rent inflation numbers, side-by-side comparisons. "Your personal experience with poverty was 40, 50 years ago, back when rents were a fraction of what they are now, back when wages actually kept pace some years. You're sitting here prescribing 1970s cures for 2024 emergencies. Housing costs have tripled in most cities since then. Wages haven't. The programs that helped you eat and study and climb out, they've been gutted, underfunded, turned into punching bags. And you helped do the gutting. That's not experience talking. That's selective memory." The room felt like it was holding its breath. Carson's face had gone from composed to flushed, eyes darting from the data sheet to Crockett to the frozen image of Mrs. Williams still lingering on the split screen. He opened his mouth once more, but nothing solid came out, just a half-formed word that died in his throat. Crockett leaned in closer to the mic, voice dropping but somehow louder in the hush. "So I have one final question for you, Dr. Carson. The country is watching. If your Yale degree and your medical training and all that complex understanding make you so uniquely suited to run HUD, why are you so bad at it?" The room detonated again. Gasps, a burst of applause from the back, shocked murmurs rolling forward like a wave. Carson sat there, mouth open, then closed. Open again, like a fish pulled out of water. No comeback, no smooth pivot, no medical metaphor to save him. Just silence. Heavy, crushing silence. His hands stayed flat on the table, knuckles pale. Crockett waited exactly 3 beats, long enough for it to hurt, then sat back down, fingers laced neat on top of her perfectly stacked papers. "I yield the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman." The gavel came down hard, crack, crack, calling for order that was already half gone. Carson's team surged forward like they'd been waiting for the signal. His chief of staff grabbed his elbow, another aide scooped up notes, and they hustled him toward the side door, heads down, no eye contact with anybody. The cameras followed every step. Crockett stayed seated, calm as ever, straightening one last corner of a document that didn't need it. The room buzzed louder now, phones lighting up, reporters scrambling toward exits. But she didn't look up. She didn't need to. The kill shot had landed clean, and the echo was already spreading far beyond those 4 walls. Do you think Crockett went too far or just enough to teach Carson a lesson? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe to the channel and like to support me in making more quality political drama videos.